Hey, welcome to Manila Updates TV. Please subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The world's attention was fixed on Venezuela, oil tankers slipping out under darkness, their movements tracked by satellites and whispered about in diplomatic circles. Every departure was a headline. Every shadowy voyage, a cause for speculation. News anchors warned of U.S. retaliation, their voices urgent as they described the latest sanctions and threats, painting a picture of imminent crisis. Political pundits filled the airwaves, debating the effectiveness of sanctions and blockades, arguing over who would blink first in this high-stakes standoff. But this spectacle was a misdirection. The real story wasn't about Caracas or its oil, but about the global architecture of power shifting quietly in the background, almost invisible to the untrained eye. While the cameras lingered on the Caribbean, the true drama was the emergence of a new economic order, one that was being written not in headlines but in boardrooms and back channels. The U.S. had long assumed its financial dominance was unassailable, participate in the world economy, and you played by American rules. The dollar was king, and Wall Street set the tempo for global trade. Venezuela, cut off from this system, should have collapsed under the weight of embargoes and isolation. That it didn't was the real headline, a quiet defiance that went largely unreported. Its survival signaled a new reality. An alternative pathway was being built, one that bypassed New York and Washington, connecting new partners and forging new alliances. The tankers weren't just carrying oil, they were carrying a message, a signal that the old order could be challenged and that new players were ready to step in. A multipolar economic world was dawning, where American power was no longer the only game in town. New centers of influence were rising and the rules were being rewritten. The real war wasn't for Venezuela's oil, but for the systems that would decide who could buy and sell it in the future. Payment networks, trade agreements, and the very currencies that would define tomorrow's markets. And in that quiet war, a new victor was emerging, one who understood that power now flowed through networks, not just nations. The world just hadn't noticed yet, but soon, everyone would have to pay attention, as the balance of power shifted before their very eyes. American power after the Cold War was built on financial systems, not just military might. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency, the backbone of global trade. To buy oil, coffee, or electronics, you needed dollars. There was no alternative. This gave Washington immense leverage. Sanctions, blacklists, and asset freezes became its tools of choice. The Treasury, not the Pentagon, enforced U.S. foreign policy. This dominance was by design, crafted through Bretton Woods and institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Nations joined willingly, trading some sovereignty for access and prosperity. But the system's strength, its universality, also bred its own challenge. The more the U.S. used its financial power as a weapon, the more the world sought alternatives. Dependence on the dollar became a vulnerability. Quietly, a demand for a Plan B grew. The world began to look for ways to escape the grip of a single power. The seeds of change were sown by America's own hand. While the U.S. policed the old order, China built a new one. Quietly, methodically. China didn't confront the dollar head-on. It constructed a parallel system, piece by piece. Venezuela became the test case. Sanctioned, isolated, desperate. The U.S. controlled the tankers, insurance, and payments, but China offered its own ships, its own insurance, and crucially, payment in yuan. Chinese energy giants bought Venezuelan oil, settling trades through China's cross-border interbank payment system, bypassing SWIFT. For Venezuela, it was survival. For China, it was proof of concept. Each transaction in yuan, each Chinese-insured tanker, was a brick in a new global structure. China showed the world, you don't have to be beholden to the dollar. No military posturing, no speeches, just logistics, finance, and infrastructure. The process was invisible to most, but transformative. China wasn't just helping Venezuela, it was beta testing a system to challenge American power. The oil kept flowing, and so did the message. A new economic architecture was quietly taking shape. The Venezuelan episode revealed a new truth: power now lies in building essential systems, not just wielding force. China's strategy isn't confrontation, it's indispensability. The Belt and Road Initiative is more than ports and railways, it's the scaffolding for a new economic sphere. When China builds infrastructure abroad, it brings its technology, finance and the expectation of settling in yuan. This creates deep dependency. Countries find it hard to pivot away. Economic interests become intertwined with Beijing's, quietly eroding US leverage. It's not overt coercion, but structural necessity. Even US allies can't easily reject Chinese systems if their economies depend on them. Sanctions can be bypassed if an alternative exists. Military threats are costly, but dependency on Chinese infrastructure is deep and lasting. China isn't winning by being stronger, it's changing the environment. Opting out of China's systems is becoming prohibitively expensive. The rules of power are being rewritten, one network at a time. Sanctions were once America's sharpest tool, less costly than war, more forceful than diplomacy. But the Venezuela case exposed a paradox. The more the US uses sanctions, the less effective they become. Each act of financial warfare pushes nations to innovate and collaborate on alternatives. Venezuela, Iran, and Russia didn't capitulate. They built new systems, often with China's help. The result, a two-tiered global economy. For US allies, the dollar system still works. For others, the risks are too high. Countries diversify reserves, trade in local currencies, and build redundancy. The dollar's dominance isn't collapsing, but its edges are eroding. American leverage is shrinking. Sanctions are now a catalyst for fragmentation, not deterrence. The world is learning to shield itself. The more America wields its economic power, the more it teaches others to escape it. At the moment of greatest need, US power is quietly slipping away. The sanctions paradox is now the new reality. American power is dramatic. Carrier groups, televised sanctions, visible shows of force. This spectacle reassures allies and intimidates adversaries. For decades, it worked because no one could escape the economic reality behind it. China's rise is the opposite, quiet, patient, and invisible. No grand announcements, just trade contracts, loan agreements, and technical standards. China acts as a system architect, weaving a web of interdependency. The US polices the old order, China builds the new one. While Washington punished Venezuela, Beijing saw a customer and a test case. The US Navy's movements were a show of force. China's flow of yuan was a show of power. This quiet approach is proving more effective. By the time the US notices, the environment has changed. The foundations of American power are being eroded, not by confrontation, but by construction. The most important moves are being made in silence. The real threat to American power isn't open defiance, it's redundancy. While headlines often focus on dramatic confrontations or sanctions, the more subtle, enduring challenge comes from the world quietly building alternatives. For decades, the world ran on a single operating system. The US-led financial network. The dollar was the default, and American institutions set the rules for global trade and finance. Now, China and others are building backups, not to destroy the old, but to ensure independence if needed. These parallel systems are designed to keep economies running even if access to the US system is lost. This move toward a multi-system world is the true challenge to US hegemony. It's not about confrontation, but about creating options and reducing risk. Think of it as a global network. Once, everyone relied on a single server. Now, regional servers can operate independently. If one goes down, the others keep the system alive. Venezuela rerouted its economy through China's system when cut off from the US. This allowed them to keep trading and avoid total isolation. Russia builds its own internet. The EU pushes the euro to reduce US vulnerability. Each region is taking steps to insulate itself from potential shocks. These are acts of self-preservation, not aggression. Countries are simply making sure they have a backup plan, just in case. The shift from resistance to redundancy is a quiet revolution, fundamentally altering the balance of power. It's a slow, steady process that's easy to overlook, but its impact is profound. American leverage depended on being the sole provider of global public goods. Control over finance, security, and trade routes gave the US unmatched influence. As alternatives emerge, that uniqueness fades. The world is no longer locked into a single system, and the monopoly on power slips away. The US may still be the best option, but having a choice changes everything. Even the perception of alternatives weakens the old order. The gatekeeper's power is diminished by the existence of an exit. In a world of options, true dominance is harder to maintain, and the rules of the game are being rewritten. History shows that shifts in global power are mirrored by shifts in dominant currencies. The British pound once ruled, backed by London's financial system, and the Royal Navy. Its decline was gradual, eroded by the rise of a stronger U.S. economy. The dollar replaced the pound not overnight, but as America's system became more essential. Today, the dollar isn't collapsing, but the conditions supporting its dominance are changing. China is now the world's largest trader and manufacturer, building the infrastructure for the yuan's rise. Oil for yuan deals are early steps, echoing the dollar's ascent while the pound still reigned. The lessened currency power reflects economic reality and system building. Britain lost primacy, not by military defeat, but by being surpassed economically. The challenge to the dollar is systemic, not military. The real victory is in which currency pays for oil and which system processes the payment. That's the true currency of control. As the quiet war draws to a close, the world stands at a crossroads, facing three distinct futures that will shape the decades ahead. The first path is a managed transition, one where the United States recognizes the rise of new powers and chooses to share its reserve currency status with the yuan and the euro, rather than resist change. In this scenario, global power is more evenly balanced. International institutions are reformed to reflect new realities, and although the system grows more complex, it remains stable and resilient. The second future is one of escalation and division. Here, the US doubles down on its dominance, wielding aggressive sanctions and even military force, pushing China and other nations to accelerate their decoupling from the Western system. The result is a fractured world, split into hostile economic blocs, a new kind of Cold War, this time fought not with missiles, but with financial weapons and digital barriers. The third, and most chaotic future, is global fragmentation. There is no clear transition, only a gradual breakdown into competing regional blocs and currencies, each vying for influence. In this world, trade becomes increasingly difficult, international cooperation falters, and disorder spreads across borders, disrupting lives and economies everywhere. The lesson from the oil war is unmistakable. The future will belong to those who build systems so essential that others simply cannot afford to leave them behind. The spectacle of confrontation, the headlines and protests, are often just distractions from the deeper shifts underway. The real contest is happening quietly, in the race to build the financial and technological infrastructure, the very plumbing of the 21st century global economy. While the world's attention was fixed on Venezuela, China was quietly laying the groundwork and step by step began to win the new war for influence and resources. The old rules and systems are fading into history, replaced by new realities and technologies. The next chapter of global power will be written not just in treaties, but in code, contracts, and the invisible connections that bind the world together.